The following production is part of the Play Some Video Games podcast network.
I know you, your past, your future.
Welcome, fellow Imperials, to the state of the Xbox Empire. We will be discussing monthly the Xbox Empire, all its greatness, and all that happens over in the Microsoft stage. Joining me for this month's program is the one and only Donnie Reese. Donnie, welcome.
Greetings! Oh, never mind.
You have been
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. It truly is an honor to be on your inaugural episode. Thank you for the invite.
Hey, it's good to have you, and of course, it's the boss is on the show, so we gotta be quiet here for Nintendo's sake. So, for the other side of the coin, though, our guest for this month, for this inaugural episode, is the one and only Mr. Sean Capri. Sean, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. I'm also honored, but my honor comes with a U. But I should also say for the audience, we mentioned this, and I'm just showing this for the audio version. I'm wearing a lot of Nintendo clothes for this Xbox podcast. So I kind of wish you did say Koopalings, Donnie.
I kid you not, because I saw the Mario on his shirt, I was 2 seconds away from dismissing him. But we allowed it this time.
Oh, come on.
So, as I mentioned, this is the first episode of The State of the Xbox Empire. What this show will be about is a monthly look at all things Xbox. It's not going to be necessarily related to any specific news that has been released. However, this will be something that can be listened to in the future. It'll be timeless, hopefully. That's the goal. So we'll just be discussing broad stroke ideas, what we think about Xbox in different departments. For instance, tonight, or whenever you're listening to this, actually, we'll be discussing Xbox exclusives through the ages. So that'll be an interesting discussion. I spent some time compiling a list of hundreds of exclusive games, and I guarantee you guys didn't realize that there were hundreds of Xbox exclusive, did you? So we'll dive into that a little bit closer here in the program. But first, before we continue on, since this is the first Xbox show, we just wanted to take a minute to introduce ourselves and why we are here. So for me, I am going to be the host going forward with this show, so I'll go first, give these guys some time to consider. And the question that I want to ask any new guest or co-host that joins on this show is what their introduction to Xbox was. And for me, it was the original Xbox. I was given the choice of either having to upgrade my graphics card on my computer or buy an Xbox. And the reason why was I wanted to play Star Wars Jedi Knight. As you know, everything revolves around Star Wars in some reason. That's why I started reading comics, and that's why I started playing Xbox. So I got the Xbox to play Star Wars Jedi Knight Jedi Outcast, which was starring Kyle Katarn, fantastic game. I ended up getting it on the PC later anyway, but that's a separate story. But that is the reason why. The second game that I got was Star Wars Obi-Wan, so you can sense how the pattern continues. And really, when you look at the Xbox, the original Xbox, there were a lot of Star Wars games on there, and there were a lot of Star Wars exclusives on there. Thinking about, obviously I mentioned Jedi Knight, but I think that came on GameCube later, Jedi Outcast. But Obi-Wan was only ever on the Xbox. And Republic Commando was only ever on the Xbox. Knights of the Old Republic was only ever on the Xbox for the console side. So I really found my home. Xbox was doing me right. It had the Star Wars license. And really, that's when I decided that I was going to play Xbox above other things. Because I had played PlayStation and Nintendo before that. But really, being able to dive in, and this is where all the Star Wars games were. I fell in love with LucasArts here, played Mercenaries, and really enjoyed what I came across playing. The introduction of Xbox Live was fantastic. I was playing Star Wars Clone Wars. Go figure, again, Star Wars. That was my introduction to it. And actually, back in the day when Xbox Live first started, they had weekly status updates or recaps of what recently happened in games. I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but they had, for specific games, you could click on it and go and see. In Star Wars, the Clone Wars game that I played a lot, they had all the leaderboards, and so they would talk about each specific gamer tag, just kind of make a little joke. I was on there once as a spider Jedi. What is that? Someone with 8 lightsabers or something like that. It was fun. It was good times. But I think at that point, I wasn't 16 yet, because I tried to enter a contest and couldn't get in, like a tournament that I would have won. I guarantee you, I would have won it. Because it revolved around the Clone Wars Game 2, the death matches, the conquests, and the King of the Hill matches, which I will take anybody still to this day in King of the Hill. Give me my tank, I'm gonna take you out. So, for me, just to boil it all down, the reason why I started playing Xbox was the Star Wars. It reeled me in, but just seeing that this had the power. At the time, the Xbox was the most powerful console, and it had a hard drive built into it. So, of course, I wanted to check it out. It was the first console that offered you HD gaming. You could play in 420? No, 480p. And it was fantastic. And I think even 720p towards the end of its life, but definitely 480 because it had the component outputs. Mm-hmm. So that's the long-winded version of why I really kind of gravitated toward the Xbox, and I've just been a fan of it ever since we are today now with the Xbox One. So I will turn it to you, Mr. Donnie. What was your first experience with Xbox, and what's your journey look like?
I, too, was originally indoctrinated into Xbox on the OG Xbox, the original Xbox. Maybe 2001, 2002, a little later than launch. I remember at the time I lived with my foster parents, and we had been playing just as much in Nintendo 64 as you could possibly play up until that point. And we decided to trade it in at like a computer game store, one of those stores that closed. I remember the place, but I can't remember the name.
Babbage's Games?
Man, it was like something... It was like computer, PC, CPU, something like that. Not like games. It wasn't a game store.
CompuSource
like,
or something like that?
Yeah, something Comp USA.
Yeah, that's
nice.
Yeah. So I remember. So the memory, I can still picture myself in the store. The memory of siphoning through like this giant box of games. Like they just had this box on the floor and you could just grab them. But we traded in for an Xbox largely because my foster dad at the time. I mean, we played a lot of sports games, and the Xbox like just had them in droves, and it looked better and played better. Like, I mean, that was the word on the street, right? At the time was it's better here. So that was like the cusp of the trade-in. But also, you know, like the original Xbox had like a hard drive, mm-hmm. right? So like you could rip music to it.
All those blocks of data.
I remember like just ripping CDs constantly to my Xbox, and so I could drive around like GTA and listen to my music and stuff. Like I spent countless amount of hours doing that. And then like memory cards, right? Like just gone. So like my foster dad at the time just thought it was like that's the place to go. Like it's, you know, it plays the games that he wanted most, the best. They had this new space action shooter that the kids will like, you know, like you gotta remember like 2002, dude. I'm like 13, you know, like, and it's really like it seems so crazy now. Like this really is like pre-internet dawn. Like it's just getting there, right? Like it's just maybe starting. Mm-hmm. So like I didn't watch E3 back then. I didn't know IGN. Like at that time, you know, everything I knew about video games is what I played at my friend's house or what the guy at the store told us. You know, so like the word on the mouth was like this space sci-fi shooter game is it. And all the sports games play best here. And, you know, like all the issues you had with all these other consoles, gone. Poof, out the window. Even had like those controllers with like the detachable cords.
Mm-hmm. Those were great. I loved them. Do you know how many times
So,
I would have
like-
tripped over my console if I wouldn't have had those?
I remember that being a big deal when you were playing with like 2, 3, 4 people. You know, like, so like, yeah. That was my first experience with the Xbox.
Nice, man.
And you mentioned, playing with 2, 3, 4 people. It had built in to the console 4 controller ports, whereas with like the PlayStation 2, you had to have the multi-tap for that. So
My foster family, there were 4 boys and 2 girls, and then an extra girl came over every other weekend. So the reason why we stayed on that Nintendo 64 for so long, it was all about co-op. Like if you couldn't play 3, 4 people at a time, like we really weren't interested. So yeah,
that's cool. Mr. Sean Capri, how about you, sir?
Oh my goodness, what a time in gaming, guys. I guess Donnie and I are close. Nathan, I'm not sure if you and I are close in age or not as well. You are ageless. But Donnie and I were about the same age at this time, in that sort of preteen, just learning about deodorant age. And I was a hardcore like PC gamer. I was only playing on PC, but I was coming up to the age where that old 3DFX graphics card was starting to show its age. And, you have that decision, that classic decision every PC gamer has of, do I dump more money into this thing, or there's that shiny new Xbox that's happening and holy crap, it looks a lot, or it seems to be a PC for my TV. And I knew the story of the Direct Xbox, and the first time I ever saw Halo was in a PC Gamer magazine. So I suppose that's actually the first time I was really hit with anything Xbox, was seeing this Halo thing and all these green colors and these lush environments. And we were on the heels of Unreal, where this was the first person shooter game to sit you outside. And like just remembering the things that we take for granted now, it's just like it was a big deal to be out of corridors and basements and outside in Unreal. So I was starting to become a bit of a graphics whore, I think, at the time, where you start like everything that was flashy, and thanks to the 3D accelerators of the time, I was all over that. And I was remembering, because I knew I was going to be on this show, so I was thinking back. And I used to be a cashier at Safeway, and there was this older guy there. He'd been working there for years, and older being like my age now, but like I was, whatever it was, 13, 14, 15, bag boy and cashier. And this guy just like, he brought us all over. He brought the whole crew from Safeway over to his place, and we just played Xbox, and I didn't even know what the heck this thing was, and we played Halo and a couple sports games, and like I was like, that is it, man, this thing. And like, how cool is it that this grown-up has it? This is neat. I didn't know you could play video games as a grown-up. This is the coolest thing I ever saw. And that was really it. That was that introduction that, I had that choice of, and I remember talking about it in this guy's apartment with a bunch of other people. It wasn't just a kid and a grown-up. It was a bunch of us. It was okay. And I remember talking about it, like, what should I do? And we kind of discussed the Xbox as my next move. And this was it moved me into a safe space, man, because PC gaming is so expensive. And I'm just now, it's so funny because I'm right now thinking about grabbing a new video card. And that's, of course, when the Bitcoin stuff is happening. It's impossible to get anything for a decent price. So yeah, Halo was the first one that I saw in a magazine, probably the first game that I played. And then when I picked one up, I actually split it with my brother, because it was like $750. Like if we think that Canadian dollar is bad now, it was worse back then. And it was like $750 or $800 for an extra controller and a game and an Xbox. And we bought it like it was like a grocery store in the photo lab section. Like that's where we bought it from. But it wasn't like your heavy hitters. We actually didn't pick up Halo. I picked up Project Gotham Racing and eventually Dead to Rights. And those were the games. Like I used to love Need for Speed games on my PC. I played Hot Pursuit way back when. And so Project Gotham was just like this endless, just try and get more. Oh, what were they? Kudos? What were the points? Kudos? Yeah, oh, yeah. So that was it. And then Battlefront kind of made its way into there. And the last thing I'll say about this, because I know I'm rambling here, is the Xbox is the reason that I understand how home networks work. Because this is where you had to have a router. You didn't even know what the heck that was. And Canadians can't say it properly anyway. So we just had a modem before that. And then all of a sudden you need this thing to split up the signal, and you can't just get a splitter. So just understanding how that all worked and making sure that we were up on Xbox Live and all that worked, and that 192.168.1.1, just how to get into the settings. Those are my memories, man. It's all because of Xbox that I know how to do a lot of the stuff that we all sort of take for granted now. It's that original OG Xbox, man.
And that was, talking about the network card in there, ahead of its time. They put it in there. They didn't know what they were really going to do with it. They didn't use it right off the bat. But then with Halo and LAN party games and things like that, it came into fruition. And then they used Xbox Live, and it was just this remarkable, foresight that they put it in there. So it was ahead of its time in a lot of ways.
I think my parents lament that foresight big time, because as soon as we found out what that port was for, we were begging them for high-speed internet. Like we were on dial-up. We were probably the last people in the city to finally go to high-speed internet, to get cable internet. Are you kidding me? It was always dial-up, and we were begging all the time. But it was pretty expensive, man.
Yeah.
It must have been like $30 or $40 a month. Are you kidding me? That's crazy.
Yeah, back then it would have been expensive. And, it's funny because we consider high speed back then. It was probably not even a megabit download.
Yep.
It was super expensive and not even that great, but it's what we had to do at the time. So that's how we got into Xbox. So now that's done. That's aside. Let's talk about our topic for this week, and that is Xbox exclusives. Now, in the original Xbox era, you guys mentioned sports games, and the sport game that comes to mind for me a lot that I remember to this day, and I remember loving a lot, was, remember back when, in 2002 and 2003, when Xbox had their own NFL game, NFL Fever, Peyton Manning was on the cover. Whatever happened to those days? They weren't bad, they were good, they were on Xbox Live. Whatever happened to that series, do you think?
We only had a CFL version with Doug Flutie on the cover.
That's what happened. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know, man. They probably found the same thing as Sega did, where they tried to do it all on their own. But I mean, EA really had, back then, especially, you couldn't compete. How do you compete with a series that begins every game with EA Sports? It's too catchy.
Yeah, it's catchy.
It's too catchy.
So, on the original Xbox, how many exclusives... Well, you guys have the list, so I'm not going to ask you this question. But, dear listener, think about this for a second. On the original Xbox, how many games do you think were exclusive to that console? Now, I'm talking about games that may have appeared on PC as well, because we know Microsoft is also on the Windows side. But how many games do you think were actually exclusive to the Microsoft console? About. And this is according to Wikipedia numbers, so take this with a grain of salt, but this gives us a picture. 219 Xbox original exclusive games. Did you guys, before you saw this list, realize there were that many? What do you think, Donnie?
Probably not. Like, if you had to ask me to guess how many, jelly beans are in the jar, I probably would have underscored that one. I would have been a little low. But then there are also, on this list, to be honest with you, there are a lot of games I never heard of. Like, even now, I'm like, what is that game? So, yeah, I can see it.
Sean, did you think there were 200?
I know there was 200 games on the Xbox, let alone exclusives. To be honest with you, really, I don't know. I was very siloed in my experience back in those days. I wasn't really, what's this strange? What's Knight's Apprentice, Memory's Adventure? I wouldn't have given that two thoughts. Yeah. So it would have been year over year. I think a lot of the titles and a lot of the volume here comes from year over year sports titles, where that's where you're getting that number. But yeah, man, I wouldn't have expected that at all. It was Tony Hawk's for me. It was NHL, and because Canada, and that was it. Battlefront, because Star Wars, and I had no idea about any of this stuff. I still, to this day, this is a horrible. People will probably just shut this off right now. I haven't played a Fable game.
Ooh.
You should. Leave.
And the Fable Anniversary Leave? Oh, I thought you meant I should play Fable. Well, how about I fire it up right now? I could actually, I've got two, this should buy me back in. I got two Xboxes right here.
Xbox One X enhanced.
Yeah, man. I got a little Oreo happening over here with my Xboxes.
An Oreo. What's in the middle?
Just the
The cream
S.
filling.
Oh, nice. So, yeah, when you think about the original Xbox, obviously we don't think of 200 and some games. We think of the games we played a lot. The Halo 2, Jade Empire, Star Wars Knights of the Republic, Republic Commando, which is still... I would love to see some sort of sequel to Republic Commando. Give me Imperial Commando, give me First Order Commando, whatever. I don't care. Give me.
These also look like console exclusives too. Like I think a bunch of these were also on PC as well.
Right. Yeah, there were some, again, like were on Windows PCs. But when you look at the console exclusive, because that's kind of what we're looking at here as far as that space, there was a lot of good stuff. And we had, which is funny to me when I was looking at this list, there's a lot of Tom Clancy games that were exclusive to the Xbox, the original Xbox. Like the sneaking around game, what's it called? I can't think off the top of my head right now. Where's that? There it is.
Splinter Cell?
Splinter Cell, yeah, because I was looking at the Ghost Recon of the Rainbow Six. But yeah, Splinter Cell.
I played Splinter Cell on Xbox.
Yeah, that's where my introduction to it was as well. And I remember playing on the Xbox and having the Spies versus Mercs mode, which was amazing at the time, right? Because you were spies trying to stay away from the Mercs, but you were trying to disable the Mercs and like outlast them. And I think you could talk to the Mercs too and just be like taunting them, which was again new to consoles. But also use that communication between you and your partner. There wasn't group parties at that time, so you were forced to use the game chat system. So if you talked, you would be heard by the other person, which was kind of cool.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, think back to before we had party chats, right? This is what it was, and that was really cool. But one of the reasons I think that the Xbox, stands out for me, was, as you mentioned before, the graphics. The graphics just look so good on it. And a case in point in that, and still to this day, because you can play it on the Xbox One X, is Ninja Gaiden Black. So you look at that game, back in the day, and still today, like I said, it looks fantastic. Back when you were playing those games, the console generation before it, you were still looking at some pixelated stuff. You were looking at a whole lot of polygons. What did you guys think when you finally got to experience, let's call it a pre-HD game? Sean, do you recall what your first pre-HD game was?
I'm not sure I completely understand, but I think probably Battlefront, if that's what you mean, like when you're looking at this game that wasn't quite HD, but it might as well look like it was. And by the way, I forgot to mention, because I was like emphatically nodding when he mentioned 480p and the component cables. I was all in on that, dude. I don't even know how much it was. Probably like $100, $120
The monster cables?
the monster cables.
Yes.
Yeah, and the super long optical cord that came with it. Like that was. I used that for well after the Xbox was a thing. But Battlefront is a game that like I look back at now and go, that thing. I do feel like that still holds up, like the original Battlefront 2. I mean, it has the benefit of just Star Wars and even the sound too. Like that was the whole experience for me. Like this is a time by the end of, man, what a formative few years the Xbox lifespan hit for me. Like I was starting to get into TVs and home theater by the end of it and stuff. So that monster cable made a huge difference to have real Dolby Digital surround sound. Like I remember Marty O'Donnell was talking about how Xbox was able to simultaneously encode and then also send out a Dolby Digital 5.1 soundtrack. And it's like, again, things that we take totally for granted, but when you watch a movie that's pre-rendered, it's all done already, but this is like on the fly encoding and sending out in 5.1. It was nuts. So yeah, my first pre-HD, I think is that what does that answer your question?
Yeah, so 480p is what I refer to as pre-HD. So yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We need those component cables plugged in the first time.
Yeah, man, that was good stuff.
And I was also, the Xbox kind of drove my understanding of technology too a little bit more. And I worked at Best Buy at the time. Xbox was in stores. And so I bought my first HD TV from there. It was an Insignia Special from Best Buy. I bought the cables. The Psionics cables, I think, was the brand. It was like just as good as Monster, but there was a super great discount if you were a Best Buy employee.
Nice.
And I remember just, getting all the cables, getting it all set up. I had this huge because I had the Nintendo 64 still hooked up, and the GameCube and the PlayStation. I had this console switcher box that you would press the different buttons to, you only have one thing going out from the switch box into the TV, but everything coming into it. It was this massive one. I might still even have it in the basement. It was great, but thinking back to it, it was again ahead of its time in the fact that it had that optical output. To that point. Today, people probably still don't even realize what optical output does on their Xbox or their PlayStation 4 because it's on there now too.
Yeah, most people skip over it, I think.
Yeah, they don't realize what it is. I mean, it's kind of maybe now more than even a couple of years ago. People understand optical fiber optic internet connection is better than DSL type connection because it's a light connection speed, and people are starting to understand that now in the general nomenclature. But back then, early 2000s, that was fantastic.
I was always obsessing with my home theater equipment to see that Dolby light pop up. Like if it didn't pop up, like something was wrong, and I'd be like, "I'm not playing anymore, man. I'm all over that. I got to figure out what setting do I need to get this thing going so that fires up."
I was right there with you, Donnie. What about you? Do you remember what your first 480p type game was, and the
First
point,
wow moment?
Yeah, the point where you're like, "This is great."
It's going to be hard because it's. Well, one, my memory's a little shady, but more so, you remember I made the jump from 64. I mean, you guys are graphics card kids. I didn't even know what a graphics card was at the time. I wasn't doing any of that. I mean, it just wasn't in the cards for me at the time. The thing that immediately jumps to mind, I remember being blown away by Elder Scrolls, and I remember being blown away by Halo 2. I think when Halo 2 came out, I think that was the best thing I'd ever seen. I was like, this is amazing. And I'm not even a Halo guy. Nathan, you know that. I've mentioned that plenty of times. Online shooters are not my gig. But when I saw it, I was like, what? That's a sweet looking game. It was probably a sports game. I mean, because we played so many of them. Oh, I remember the first time I ever played Pebble Beach.
Oh,
I played
nice.
it on Xbox. Yeah. Yeah, and I was like, this looks like you're actually there. And yeah, it didn't, but at the time, it totally did. You're like, oh my God, you see the waves crashing against the rocks. So maybe something like that.
Nice. Yeah, and when you think about those games too, obviously the Halos and the Project Gotham Racings, and I think the first Forza came out on the original Xbox too. Those games that were developed by Microsoft specifically for that platform definitely took advantage of that hardware and made it look fantastic. With that Microsoft logo came up there, it was going to be a good game. So really interesting to consider some of the Xbox exclusives that were on the original Xbox, but also interesting to consider what happened to some of them. So like Crimson Skies, it was a one and done. We never heard anything else from that franchise again, which is odd. We have it now on Xbox One backwards compatibility, but why didn't we ever get a follow-up to it? Why didn't we ever get a chance to see what happened next in that story? Because it was actually a pretty good story. So are there any game series that you were introduced to that were exclusive to Xbox that you wonder just where they went on the original Xbox?
I wasn't introduced to the series, and it's sort of a tangential jump here, but I played the crap out of MechWarrior, MechWarrior 2 on PC, and to see Mech Assault on Xbox, I would love more mech games, really. And even if it's within the Mech Assault world, I think there is some weird online only or PC only stuff that happened with MechWarrior or that brand. But I would love some more. Just load up a giant robot and then travel this land as this hulking beast of a machine, and just see if you've built something that can take down the next guy. I think that, I don't know, the closest thing would be Titanfall, I guess, but there's not the same level of customizable and just the thought behind building this particular thing. And there's just so much attention put into the atmosphere. I remember the soundtrack was so incredible, and just you drop down and you've got this vast open space. But if you saw somebody, if you saw another robot or another mech off in the distance, it was on. You were trying to flank them if you could and all this other stuff. Yeah. I love those mech games, man.
That was a good franchise. Donnie, anything that you wonder where it went that was an exclusive on the OG Xbox?
Fable?
Well, I mean,
I guess that's the
it made an
obvious
appearance
one.
again.
Yeah.
No, I understand that. Probably not. I mean, I feel bad because I don't have an answer, but again, at the time, I played like the biggest releases we could find. We didn't have that many games. It was a short console life, so I didn't dive into to like the deep cuts at the time. I don't think. I mean, I'm sure I did. I'm sure I had demos. Like I remember demos were huge,
Oh yeah,
right?
man.
So I remember I demoed all kinds of things, but when you're demoing, whatever you can get your hands on, they probably didn't keep like a long lasting touch. But I mean, I played a lot of like Outlaw Golf. I remember that, so it wasn't like particularly like my favorite golf game, but I didn't play it and played a lot of it. So there was a bunch of like experimental, releases on the Xbox at the time. Like all kinds of weird things were coming to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you mentioned, Sean, the building a mech and going and trying to see if your mech stood up against someone else's that you would find in the field. So when you were describing that, it reminded me of a game on Xbox 360. So let's move up a generation. Let's go take a look at Xbox 360. There was an exclusive title called Chrome Hounds. Did either of you play this game or know what it is?
Never heard of it.
So I think
I've heard of it.
I think it's by Sega, but it was actually from Software. And it was a game where it was really cool. There were like 3 warring nations, so you aligned with one nation, and this battle was ongoing at reset like every week, and you would elect leaders for that nation that were like NPC type characters, but you'd vote to understand what kind of materials you'd have to build your mech, and what kind of resources you would have and things like that. And so there would just be this constant war going on, and you would create these mechs with different type of cannons, howitzers, machine guns, different things like that, walking, rolling, wheels, tracks, crazy looking things. It was actually just really, really, really cool. And I played that for a long time too, because it was just, a fun game, a really cool idea. And I think there was actually a Chrome Hounds 2 that may have come out later, but this first one was really fun, really good, really groundbreaking for the time with just that persistent online activity thing. So that if that ever comes to backwards compatibility, Sean, you should check it out. Chrome Hounds.
Nice, man. That sounds awesome.
But as we look on the Xbox 360, how many exclusives do you think there were here? There weren't as many as were on the original Xbox. And again, you guys have access to this list, so
Really?
you know.
That's insane.
I know. So we had total exclusivities, including Microsoft, that could have also appeared in PC, 181 that were exclusive to the Xbox 360. That includes games like Halo Wars, Left 4 Dead, Fable 2, Fable 3, Forza Horizon, the first Forza Horizon. That's where we saw Forza Horizon for the first time. Sean, did you play the first Forza Horizon, or did you jump in a little later?
No, I was later, man. I didn't understand the open world stuff. I didn't get any of that. And even looking back, like I've played Forza Horizon 2, it's not the same, dude. Like the Forza Horizon 3, people who have listened to me know that's my 2016 game of the year, man. Like it is. I've got so many hours put into that game. Level 150. I've got like it's just insane. That game is terrific. But yes, let's focus on the 360 because this is really where like the first Xbox was. Okay, I don't want to do PC gaming, so this is what's here for me. The 360 is where things really took off. And my sister will, to this day, always make fun of me for this moment I got just a little excited about. One of my favorite games of all time, it was an exclusive, which was BioShock. And I told her that I wanted it for Christmas, and I heard it might be Game of the Year was my quote that I got a little too nerdy for her for that second. So anytime that I ask for a video game for Christmas, she always brings up, "Is it going to be Game of the Year?" But this is it, man. This is one of my favorite, if not my favorite console of all time. The Xbox 360. I was blown away watching my friend fire this thing up with a wireless controller. Are you kidding me? What? Like we don't have to get up anymore? Perfect. I've never been lazier. In my life. This is the laziest period of my life is when the 360 comes out. And what a cool name, and it looks sleek and sexy and that green glow. I loved everything about this thing. It was high definition even before we were getting really into HDMI. We didn't know what to do with ports on the back because sometimes depending on what you plugged in, some versions of the 360 would block the optical output on it as well. Like, there's just so many weird things about the 360, but I absolutely love it. When we get into some of these games, Nathan, like, I think people will quickly remember why the 360 did so well when we talk about, especially when we talk about exclusives.
So, Sean, did you get a 360 day of release, or was it a little bit
No,
later?
man. No, it was later, but I did this is my regret. I think everybody has at least one of these. I sold my original Xbox, all the controllers, all the games. I think I got $200 for it to then that got me less than halfway to a 360 in a game. So I wasn't quite day one, but it was pretty close to the start, and it was watching my friend fire it up with a wireless controller. I'm like, I gotta get one of those.
Nice. Donnie, did you get one day one, or were you a little late to the party?
I got one year one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the launch
same here.
year, so was it that fall, or just within that first year?
I got mine the same month I got my Wii, if that helps.
Did you get the Wii when it came out? Because they came out like
I got the
within a week
Wii
of each
like.
other.
Did they?
Yeah.
Well, then I got them both the same time then.
Okay.
I thought the Xbox 360 dropped like a year before.
Yeah,
the Wii,
you're right.
no?
It did actually. It came out the November before, and then the PS3 and the Wii dropped within a week.
The following year, I had like the best video gaming year of my life. I bought a Wii day and date, and I bought a 360. I remember bringing them both home and hooking them both up in separate. I kept running back and forth from like room to room. So yeah.
What was the first game that you got on your 360?
Oh, and I was gonna say this earlier. Probably my almost, maybe even to this day, the most graphically like powerful moment for me in video game was when I booted up NCAA 2004, 2005, whatever was out at that time,
Yeah, man.
and seeing the gleam and the reflection off of a helmet and like blades of grass. I was like face melted. I was like, "Oh my! Do you see this?" Like, oh, Joe.
Do you remember the Fight Night demos that they would play in like
Yes.
Best Buys? Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I was just, yeah. I don't know if I've ever been more impressed with graphics, and we've had some pretty graphics since then. But that, I'll never forget that. That day, I was like, it blew me away.
That was a good leap. So I did get my Xbox on the day it released. I actually was working at Best Buy at the time again, and I was able to finagle them to let me go ahead and buy one, because if anyone worked for there, you know that they didn't like you buying stuff if you were an employee. It was for the customers, which is stupid because isn't my money just as good? Anyway, so I was able to get one day and date. I was kind of the video game guru there. I was the one that I just focus on games. Which was in the media department, but I was like, you know what, music I don't really know much about. I'll focus over here in games and maybe help out in movies, and so that's what I did. And I got the first day when it came out wasn't Halo. No, there wasn't a Halo. It was Perfect Dark Zero, and I think there was Project Gotham Racing something. Let me look here. I got this list in front of me. Why don't I make use of it? So Perfect Dark Zero for sure. That was the first game I got. And World War II, no, it was Call of Duty 2?
Yep.
Yeah. And those two games looked fantastic. Like,
Oh my God, Call of Duty 2. Are you? Oh, dude.
Was that the Normandy one?
yeah, that was World War
yeah.
II.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we had that because I worked at. It was called Future Shop. It was the Canadian version of Best Buy. Best Buy actually came into Canada and bought Future Shop and then became Best Buy. And we had that playing on a 60-inch Sony LCD rear projection TV. Like, it was just gorgeous. And it was always on there. It was between that and NHL, whatever the heck year it was, 2005, I think. And that game was just like the smoke. I remember even thinking back into the 64 days. I used to like evaluate games on the explosions and the smoke, and I always thought, sorry, I can't ignore that Future Shop might be the most Canadian thing ever. You're probably right. Oh my gosh, yeah, we had that playing. I totally lost my train of thought, guys. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Probably when the Xbox 360 came out, you know what game I played on it the most for like that first few months? It was Geometry Wars.
Dude, Yeah, this is so my element. Like the 360 is so like this is where Donnie grew up into gaming. Like this whole generation is what's molded me. I didn't come up through the early 90s and played SNES for hours and hours and hours. Like this was my gaming generation. As like the younger one. I played the old stuff for sure. I had an N64 and I played the stuff before that. But this was like the time I came home from school and played games until the sun came up. Like I played games. I beat games. Like I rolled through them dozens and dozens. I love Geometry Wars. To this day, I still play Geometry Wars Retro. That's one of my favorite games.
And it's funny because that was Bizarre Creations, who also created the Project Gotham games. And this was actually made as a loading game for one of the Project Gotham racing games.
That's awesome.
That is pretty cool.
And so back in the day when fantastic games like that only cost like $5, you could just drop your $5 down, which was expensive, kind of a notion at that time in a lot of ways. But that $5 gave me so many hours of just enjoyment and just loving that system, because what I would do is I would plug it in there to my HD TV and I would turn on my surround sound with that Dolby Digital, and I would just let the beat just flow over me and just get so zoned in. That game was so good. So good.
One of the best. They haven't topped it since. They've tried.
They have tried.
It's not as good as the original.
So looking or thinking about the Xbox 360 generation, what is your favorite either series that was introduced or your favorite game that you played in that generation? So, Sean, you've been a little quiet. Let's go to you first.
Oh my gosh, where do you even start? And I have to say, I don't even know if you can call it a game. And it's not really answering your question. I'm just flipping through this.
He's just blatant disregard for everything.
I'll come back to it if Donnie doesn't have another message for me. It totally distracts me from my point, which because I'm a flippant idiot. The orange box was an exclusive to Xbox 360 that I don't really see here, but that is like one of the greatest purchases that you could have on the Xbox 360. Where else do you start, man? Like I love Left 4 Dead. When Donnie said I was playing, this is a game, or this is a system where you're playing till all hours of the night.
Yeah.
Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2 forever and ever and ever, and like brutally hard. And actually, it's funny now looking back on that game. It hasn't been nearly as long, obviously, but virtually unplayable in terms of frame rate, which does remind me of GoldenEye in many ways. It's this multiplayer focused game that I don't know what it is. It's just like it's just so weird and so different, and every time you play it, it's different. I remember hearing about the way that it was built, and this is the time. Maybe only match now that we're podcasting, but this is probably the time in gaming for me where I knew more about the games than any other time. Like I knew how Left 4 Dead worked before I played it. Like I knew that if you were really crap in the bed, it was going to help you out a little bit. But if you were doing pretty good, it would throw a couple witches at you and try and trip you up. Like it had dynamic, emergent gameplay that was really incredible. Mass Effect was one of my it's still to this day one of my favorite series of all time. It got me into role-playing games in a way that no other game really had, and strung them all together, by the way, with Canadian Edmontonian. This is actually close to home for me. These games you could carry your saves over if you didn't have a Red Ring of Death, of course.
Oh.
But Mass Effect, Left 4 Dead, and BioShock are like kind of the holy trinity. And I'm probably missing. That's not even the holy trinity. But like those are three incredible games. BioShock blew my mind from the demo right through until I played the entire thing. I'm missing Gears of War, of course, but now I'm just naming games. Gears of War. I'll say this about Gears of War. That was the first time that I had heard about it, and I remember looking at it in the Future Shop, and I'm like, I heard good things about this thing. Let's pick it up. And it was a pretty like non-educated, just as I said, this is when I knew the most about games. I just didn't really look too much into Gears of War. And I was like, this game is amazing. Look at the weight of these guys. Look at the size of them. I've never seen a character like this before. And look at the way you just kind of like suck into that wall and you're safe. And you got a freaking chainsaw in the end of your gun. It's one of the most original, and now it's very dated in its gameplay because every other game became a cover shooter. Like this introduced us to the genre of cover shooter. But Gears of War was so innovative in so many different ways. Again, perfect timing for what a gritty, dark, adult, mature, gross game that wasn't Doom. Like I think a bunch of us were looking for the next mature game, and this did it in a super interesting way. But I think we've tapered off from that for a little bit now. So,
So if you had to pick just one from the 360
Oh,
generation, would it be?
what?
Just one.
I don't know, man. I think, is it series or one game?
Either.
I think if it's gonna be series, I'll probably go Gears, even more than Halo. I liked Gears more than Halo back then. I actually like the latter, and people hate me for this. I love Halo 4 and 5. They capture me more than Halos 1, 2, and 3.
Nice. Now, before I go to you, Donnie, because I know you're chomping, I did want to give a little bit of a course correction to Sean. There was a PlayStation 3 port done by Electronic Arts of the Orange Box that was released by PlayStation or by
EA?
By EA in 2008. It was buggy as all get out though. So
It doesn't count then.
Yeah, it doesn't count. Just like what was that Bethesda game that came out that was unplayable pretty much on the PlayStation for a little while? Was
Like
that Skyrim?
all of them?
Or,
Skyrim. Yeah.
so
Oh man, I remember being there midnight picking up Skyrim.
Donnie, since you got the mic, what say you?
I was gonna plead to pick two, but Sean said Gears, so I'll let that one slide. I mean, my friends and I played Gears forever. I'm such a fan of that series. The only answer that I could possibly muster to bring to this is Fable. Fable is still so very much a part of my fandom for anything Xbox. I mean, there have been times with the troubled road of the Xbox One where I was like, you know what? No Fable, no console. And then, like, you get these murmurings, I'm like, I'm right there. The moment, like, Fable drops, I'm right there. I love that series to death. I remember playing it for the first time on the old Xbox, and at the time, when I was, like, a preteen, early teenager, it felt like such an evolution of everything I wanted, like, Zelda to be. I was like, oh my God, I can marry people, and there are these other things I can do, but it's still not like full-on RPG, like it's still action adventure, still linear, like campaign that I was used to. It was like comfort food. It's just different. And I felt like there was a while there in my life where I just rotated Zelda and Fable games. Probably like a 4 or 5 year period. That's all I did, as I just played a Zelda game, and then I played a Fable game, and I played the next Zelda game, and the next Fable game. But man, Fable 2 and Fable 3, I know people hate on Fable 3. I love Fable 3. Both those games. I think it was like the first foray into that infamous clone where you could bend the world based on your decisions and choices. And like, there's so many games have spawned off from like that just simple concept, right? You're going to decide something is going to impact everything around you. All of your side quests, the way the world looks, especially like Fable 2, man. Like if you went evil, like the clouds would darken and everything would turn red. I mean, it was, oh man, I spent countless amounts of hours in Fable. And I wonder at the time, it's just like my little echo chamber didn't know. Because, Josh makes fun of me to this day. I never played Mass Effect like when Mass Effect was big. It didn't dawn on me to ever do so. Like I kind of looked, I saw it, I saw the box art and I was like, that's cool. I'm not really into space stuff. I'd rather chainsaw folks to death and then go play this like lovable British witty adventure game, right? And they make fun of farts and they do like these stupid jokes. And I mean, it was great. It was like a great tandem. But before I turn back to you, Nathan, I'd be remiss if we didn't mention the fact that Gears had just an incredible marketing campaign. Like Halo 2, I felt like that game just punctured everything that, like, anybody that I knew was like, you see that Gears? You see that commercial? You see that? Like, it was on tongue. It was there. Like, there are very few games that just kind of broke into awareness like Gears and Halo 2 have ever done. I mean, those were huge.
Yeah.
It's a rare thing that, like, when a game got, and only gamers know this feeling, but when a game got a commercial, like, this game got a commercial, like, you get excited for the game, just not even if it was the worst commercial you've ever seen.
Yep.
That's a video game on TV. Oh my God.
Or when it's like the commercial's so good, like your parents ask you about it.
Oh, that's
people
next
have
level.
never
That's
picked up
why
a
Gears
controller.
is
Like,
special.
what's this Gears of War thing? And it was fantastic.
Yeah.
That Gears commercial always reminds me of Stone Sour because people pick it up thinking like, oh, it's so nice. Like, look at that. It's just gentle and everything. And that Stone Sour song, I'm looking at you through the glass. And then you pick it up and it's like, oh, this is the Slipknot guy.
Yep.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I remember my first exposure to the Gears of War games was, I don't know if it was a commercial or just a full-on trailer where it was the Mad World song playing in the background. It was just
That's what I mean.
It ended on that big spider monster at the end. It was just really a good job marketing. Fantastic point. And
Fable, I had a dog. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I got to put that in.
I did
there.
have a dog, which is great.
I had a
Great
dog.
point.
I had a companion. I ran this whole world. I had a pet. And nobody hit my dog. Any Fable fan out there knows exactly what I'm saying. If a skeleton hit my dog, there's hell to pay.
Donnie, I gotta say, man, I am just so happy I'm talking to you tonight because all I want to do right now is just go play Fable.
Oh, it's
I
great.
want to go
Dude.
try this for the first time.
I'm gonna go replay Fable. When I got the Xbox X Enhanced, is the first thing I tweeted. I was the first person to tweet Nathan. Now's the time. I've been waiting. Now is the time.
at
Go
that.
play Fable Anniversary. Yeah, I love Fable. I've always loved. Yeah,
Nice, man. You're
can't
selling
keep
me on
saying
it
it. I'm
big
gonna keep
time.
saying it over and over again.
I need to go play this Fable Anniversary game
You need to
because
take that out of the wrapper,
I
man.
haven't taken it out of the wrapper yet. I need to because this is the one Fable game I haven't yet played. I've played 2 and 3. I just haven't played this one, so I'm looking forward to actually playing this one finally.
Nice.
So my pick, and we've kind of mentioned it before, so we don't have to go too far into it, but I still consider this an exclusive, is Mass Effect. Mass Effect came out. It was later ported to the PlayStation 3. I think when they did when EA bought BioWare or whatever happened there, and they brought out that 3-pack. You could then play the first Mass Effect on PlayStation 3, but for the longest time it wasn't exclusive, and I still consider it to be because I have the box art that says only on Xbox.
Yep, same here.
So that game was just fantastic. It was my first experience of really playing that kind of game, on that kind of scale that wasn't a Star Wars game, because we know Knights of the Old Republic on the original Xbox, also an exclusive, was built by BioWare, and so we kind of understood the choices that you could make. And then with Mass Effect, it just took it to a whole new level. It built its own world. It was its own thing, rich in universe and just all the history that you just knew was there, and you felt like you've always been there, and it was easy to adapt to and understand what was going on, even though it was set, hundreds of years in the future, and there's all the space travel and Mass Effect stuff and all these aliens and Big Gather everywhere. But it was such a great story, and you look at the villain in Saren in that story.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, man.
It's such a great story, and how. This is spoilers for Mass Effect. I'm sorry, but I have to do this. That last battle with Saren could play out so many different ways, and it was just it was so cool to me that you could talk him down, and you could make him realize that what he did was just terrible and the wrong way to do everything, and then he ends up taking his own life. It's just
I didn't know that.
yeah. And so you don't have to have that final battle with him, and he realizes what he's done, and just like, oh my gosh, and then he ends it himself. So just the whole story with Saren and what happens there and his corruption and just the beginning of that whole story, just so good. And I am a Mass Effect 1, that's my favorite out of the whole series. I loved driving around in the Nomad or whatever that was called back then. I loved just climbing around all the
Mako?
different planets. Yeah, the Mako. I loved climbing around all the different planets. On Earth, you could kind of go around, and you were on the moon. You were on the moon. You'd drive around, and you would see Earth just kind of come up on the horizon. Mm-hmm. It was so good. It looked fantastic. The sound was amazing. There were some crazy elevator load scenes, but in all the things put together, that was just a fantastic game and my most memorable game on the Xbox 360. And I think that was the first game I ever got all the achievements in too. So
Nice.
There's that. Which also, by the way, 360 introduced the achievements. So there's that.
Oh yeah, good call.
And people have tried to copy since then, but achievements are so good. So let's move on to the current generation then. So we're looking at the Xbox One now, which when I was, again, putting this list together, I was looking at these exclusive lists, and there's a ton on the Xbox One right now that are exclusive because of the ID at Xbox program and the digital store and how everything has just kind of evolved in the digital space. And these aren't timed. At least right now, they are currently exclusive to the Xbox One or to the Xbox app on the Windows 10, which, again, same Microsoft thing. So, dear listener, you say Xbox has no exclusives. However, I say to you, 188 exclusives available to you at this time on the Microsoft platform known as Xbox. 188 games. Donnie, did you figure that there were 188?
Yeah, that wouldn't have shocked me. If you'd asked me that an hour ago, I wouldn't have been shocked by that number. I know that there are games. Every console has games. Maybe except for the Wii U, but every console has games. The question is like, how many of those games are you excited or interested or following? You know, that's the thing that drives people's psyche. Like it could have 1,000 games, but if there aren't 10 that everybody are like looking updates for, you know, people don't count them anymore.
Yeah. Now, Sean.
Hey, you don't want me to name 6 games now?
When you look at this list of games and how there's 188 of them,
Yeah.
when you hear people say Xbox has no games, what does this number make you feel or make you think?
Well, the number, I echo Donnie as well, actually. The number has very little to do with it, but it's and here I'm just going to do the thing. When you look at games like Ori and the Blind Forest and IDARB and Gears 4 and Halo 5, like we're into some really exciting stuff, and I think probably the most underrated exclusive would be Quantum Break. But I don't know what my favorite is. It feels weird to pick one at this stage. I like sort of by default Forza Horizon 3 might be it. But like I love Titanfall. Like Titanfall was one of the big reasons I bought an Xbox, or I even wanted one. I shouldn't say I bought it. Because I got it as a stag present. I was like, well, I should have got married a long time ago. I get a console as a gift. Should have done this forever ago. But Titanfall is probably the one that was like, that was at E3 when they showed it off, and the pilot gets pulled up into the mech and everything like that. I love Titanfall. I think it's such a shame that we haven't seen more come out of that game. But I think it's totally unique and plays so flawlessly. And I love the motion and locomotion in as a pilot. I think it's incredible.
Mm-hmm. So, tracking back just a hair here, when did you guys get your Xbox One? Donnie, did you get one on day one, or were you a little late to the party again?
I was late to the party. I made the switch to go PlayStation after that E3 performance.
Okay.
And I didn't get an Xbox One until Quantum Break came, because I got the Quantum Break bundle.
It took you that long to get it, didn't it? Wow, that's right.
Yep.
And Sean, when did you snag your Xbox One?
Yeah, I held off for the first little bit. I was a little scared by the price, to be honest. And I was it was the day of my stag before Chelsea and I got married in 2014. I was hanging out with my best friend, and I was telling him, like, I think I really want an Xbox, but I think I might just hold off for now. Like, I think I'm okay. And then I got to his place, and he said, well, a bunch of the guys got together and bought you an Xbox. So
wow.
That was pretty much how it happened. Like, I don't know when I would have got it after that, actually. Like, maybe, I think it was just before Titanfall came out, because I think that was in March, something like that.
Yep.
So it would have been right around there that I would have eventually pulled the trigger. And I was, by the way, totally won over by the Kinect. And like I thought everything that they were like, I was like completely opposite from everybody else. Of like all the things that everybody hated about it, I was like, well, it's different. And it wasn't even like I don't know. Maybe I guess I was a bit of a fanboy at that stage. But I've always had like ever since the original X or Dreamcast, I guess I just started buying like all the consoles. I wasn't really locked in on one. I had a PlayStation. I did a big fat PlayStation 3 that actually was backwards compatible. So like. I don't know. I was really locked in on. I didn't even dislike Matrick at the time. I remember Chelsea watching these videos with me, and she's like, "This guy's a douche," and I wasn't bothered by any of it. I was just really excited that this was like. It seemed like a next generation of console was going to do something more than just play games prettier than before, and that's kind of the leap that I was looking forward to. But
I mean, for me at the time, after that E3 showing, like that used games part. I'll never forget, like, that stung me so hard. I pre-ordered, like, the day after. Like, the day after I walked in GameStop, and I was like, PlayStation.
Yeah.
Like, and I'd had an Xbox since the original. And I'm a lot like you, I guess, in that regard. I try to buy everything whenever I could afford it, because I just love playing a lot of different things, and especially exclusives. Like I'm like almost an exclusive gamer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Wii U and Switch were like one of the only consoles I bought day one. Off the top of my head, I think that might be it.
So I bought the Xbox One day one as well. I'm what you call a fanboy, I suppose, or an early adopter.
Sure.
But like you, Sean, I enjoyed the Kinect. I thought it was great, and I loved using it for voice commands. I did the Xbox on, I did the Xbox off.
Oh yeah, man.
Change the channels, change the volume. Go to Rise, Son of Rome. All that stuff. I loved it. It was great. I used it all the time.
It was the Google Home.
Yeah, exactly, it was. It was, again, ahead of its time, because now, what do we all have? We all have Alexas in our house. We all have, the HomePods or the Google Homes, like you said. And it was already doing all that, because Cortana was, introduced a little bit later, but she could tell you all the same stuff that they do now. So, again, the Kinect, while, it made the cost of the box more expensive, per se, it was just perceived, people didn't necessarily want it. Motion gaming was still kind of a gimmick that the hardcore quote-unquote gamers didn't want, and it was just ill-received, like you said.
Well, I gotta say, I didn't like that showing either. I remember that presentation so much, because they showed the Kinect, they kept talking about the Kinect. I was one of those gamers that felt burned by the first Kinect, because I was all in on Kinect. I forget the dude, was it Ease, who did the Milo demonstration, or like he handed the TV a piece of paper and the guy took
Peter
it like on the
Mullen did.
360. I couldn't, like, that was a wow moment for me. I remember that E3 was one of the first E3s I watched. I was like, this is amazing. It's Wii without holding a controller. You can kick a ball. And I was all in on Kinect, beta test. And then I got it, and I was like, well, it really doesn't work. And then, like, you got to move your coffee table, and so, like, when they started launching a console that was, like, so heavily favored in it, I was like, that's not what I want to hear right now. I wasn't, like, anti-Kinect. It's just, like, why is everything Kinect? Why are you showing me 8 Kinect games?
And looking at a game like Rise, Son of Rome, they made it for voice commands. So, you could say, fire volley, and you were yelling at your TV to do all this stuff. I think it was the original Kinect where they put it into Mass Effect 3, and they heal tally or something like that. You could do all those different commands.
They had it in Madden.
Yeah, you could do
At one
audibles.
point.
Yep. So it was tried to shoehorned in a little bit here and there. Sure, it also did have, because the original Xbox controller had little infrared lights in the front of it, and the Kinect was the sensor for those infrared lights. So you could do like shaking motions on the controller in different games. Like Dead Rising 3, I think it was, which was the launch one, to get zombies off you. So you'd shake your controller, and that's how it recognized it, because there weren't any accelerometers in the controller itself, but it was just by those that motion sense tracking and the infrared. So kind of cool. It had a lot of technology built into it. It was actually a really cool piece of technology, just execution wasn't quite there.
I
Great
thought
camera.
that thing was supposed to also like determine what if you're playing like a 4-player multiplayer game, and if you're sitting on like the right hand side, it would put you in that corner too. Like there's a whole bunch of different like interactions and things that could happen, but with it seeing you, which we never really got to see. Anytime anybody talks about Kinect, we talk about voice commands and everything like that, but like there was a lot of different things it could do just to recognize who you were.
It could
And,
detect
like,
your heart rate.
I think you could wave your hand right and say like sign into my stuff or something like that, and it would show your dashboard versus somebody else's. And I was so like I was very excited about this, so much so that I accidentally stole my friend's day one achievement, because I was like, hey man, you got to check out how you can use like these QR codes, and it came like the day one version had that achievement, and you could unlock it instead of typing in the code, because that's a giant pain in the ass. You just use the QR, and I accidentally, because I was holding it, it saw me, and I stole his day one achievement, because I didn't have a day one console, but it gave it to me anyways. It was logged in on my gamer tag.
Was he upset?
No, he didn't care.
Oh, okay, good.
Like he's like the exact opposite of me. Like he didn't care at all. But like I was over there, I set up his TV, and he had like this little tray. I don't even know what else it could have been for other than a Kinect. But his TV stand had a tray above. He could sit that thing on.
Nice. Yeah, I remember they were selling that kind of stuff, like the wall adapters and all this other stuff for the Kinect when it came out. But so
I really thought like Rock Band would have been a thing then too, because like streaming started to come into play too, and everybody had a camera, and I really thought there'd be like a lot of talent that people would have had come up through Rock Band and Guitar Hero on that console.
This generation really, to me, seems to be the generation of sharing, whether it be streaming or capturing screenshots or play clips, whatever it is. That seems to be that's defining this generation to me more than anything else.
Yep.
So for me, my favorite game to this point on the Xbox One, I love, and like you, Sean, absolutely love Forza Horizon 3. It is, to me, just the pinnacle of racing, the pinnacle of fun. It just gets driving in a way that, you would never take your car and go off-roading and go crazy and just bash into stuff, but you can do that in this arcade setting and just kind of go around, try to get the best 180s or 360s or whatever it is, and, jump the car. Like, how far can I jump this? Or you can get the DLC for the Hot Wheels and just do crazy stuff and have amazing cars and just... It's everything I could have wanted in a game. And what's crazy is that in 2 years or a year, we're going to get a game that tops it. Because that's just the way Forza Horizon has been ever since then. I don't know how you can really top Forza Horizon 3. If you look at the complete package with Blizzard Mountain and the Hot Wheels DLC and all the cars that came with it, it was fantastic. And that game, also, the engine of it, I believe it was Forza Horizon 3's engine. It might have been 2's. Drove the Forza Horizon Fast and Furious game. Do you remember that? It came out as a free download. It was both on 360 and on... Yeah, so it had been Forza Horizon 2. 360 and on Xbox One. Free download. Go check it out. Get 1,000 gamer score. Just kind of understanding what it does. Playing as the game, or as the cars from the movie in the game. So it was just really cool. But Forza Horizon 3 for me has to be my, at this point, favorite game on the Xbox One. Donnie, did you give a game? I don't remember if you did or not.
I'm sorry?
Did you give a favorite game for the Xbox One, Jen?
No. My favorite one would probably be Forza Horizon. I mean, after I gave and succumbed to Nathan's will, I lost my mind for about a month and found the joy that is Forza Horizon 3. I don't even like racing games.
Yeah,
it's the only
man.
thing I can tell Kevin and Devin and everybody else to say I don't like racing games. I don't like racing games either. I hadn't played racing game in years. Played Forza Horizon 3, and that'll be the only racing game I play until further notice, because I can't wait to play the next Forza Horizon, the next Forza Horizon, the next Forza Horizon. It's so... I mean, like Nathan said, it's so grand in the sense that it is a racing game, but it's not a racing game. Like, Nathan and you and I probably could not have spent our time in Forza Horizon 3 differently. I kept seeing your ghost. You kept racing with Brian. You're racing with Mo. You're going out. You're collecting all these cars. Didn't care about any of that crap. I'm running through. I'm jumping through signs. I'm jumping over stuff. I'm jumping over buildings. I'm finding barns.
Yeah.
My son is playing. Like, we're customizing our cars. We didn't care about any of that. I did like the speed traps. I'd find a speed trap and I'd sit there for 30 minutes trying to find the best car, the best thing to do that. But I barely even raced. I barely did even racing that game. I played it. It's probably my most played game on Xbox.
And you played it your way.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. I mean, I loved it. It's like open world adventure game, but you're a car instead of a dude or girl. But I actually do want to mention that probably my second favorite Xbox game is Ori and the Blind Forest.
Yeah.
And we have an upcoming release, and
Golf clap.
Ori is painfully hard, at least for me, as a platformer, and every bit as rewarding. Probably the best 15 minutes you can play on Xbox is the opening 15 minutes for Ori and the Blind Forest. Made me tear up the first time I played it. It was really good stuff.
Really good. I mean, the visuals, the soundtrack, and just everything about that game is just beautiful.
To this day, I stand by it. If that game was on another console, it'd be like, I feel like it'd be a much bigger deal. Like, I feel like somebody else, like it just doesn't seem to have the weight or garner the attention that I think it deserves. Ori and the Blind Forest, the sequel, is a huge game.
Yep.
It should be treated as such.
I totally agree.
Yep. Also, Cuphead, honorable mention, is just a
Shout
really
out to
great game.
Cuphead. Yep.
Yep. So we've talked about these exclusives now through the Xbox generations. We've had some that have gone away, just like Crimson Skies. We don't know what happened or why they went away, because everybody that played them always loved them, and it was a good experience. But what is it that you think that you need to see, or that we need to see from Xbox and the exclusive department going forward? If you ran Xbox today and you could go over to Phil Spencer and you said, "Hey, Phil, this is what we got to do. This is how we're gonna win." What would your game plan be, Sean?
It's hard because this is why I don't actually run Xbox or Nintendo for that matter, is because like some of the like what we think would be really exciting is a version of something that's been done before. So, and I guess to a degree, what I'm getting at is I would actually like to see Halo, because I think Halo is like the pillar. It's the flagship Xbox series and IP that everybody knows. I would venture to say, almost hesitantly so, I want to merge Halo and Destiny. Like, I want Halo to take on that Bungie, like what Bungie was able to kind of take their lessons from Halo and go off and make Destiny. I want Halo to do that next. Mm-hmm. Halo 5 is great. In my opinion, I don't care. I've never cared about story in Halo. I think it's all pretty dumb, if you ask me. But the gameplay is second to none. And it is so much fun to play with friends. And I think Halo 5's campaign, just like from a level to level standpoint, is so much fun. But it doesn't push the envelope in any way in terms of what our video game's capable of in terms of connecting us with our friends. And I would love to see Halo be bigger than it is. Or Gears, for that matter, or any of these other ones. I think that there has to be, for Xbox to really take it up a notch, one of their flagship series has to be part of this cutting edge giant games, because they all feel like just a step below what some of the biggest publishers are pushing out right now. And with the most powerful console, we need the most powerful game, like something that takes advantage not just from teraflops or anything like that, but just something that gives us an experience that we've never had before, we didn't think was possible. So I want that. I want Halo to escape from its level to level campaign to something a little bit more evolved, if I could be so bold.
Ooh, there you go. So for me, if I could go up to Phil Spencer and just give him an idea and say, this is what I would do. Timed exclusivity stuff is not the answer. It just muddles the message. It just, gamers don't like it. You look at what happened with Rise of the Tomb Raider, and it was just, not a good situation, not a good scenario. Taking third-party content that was available, like as a sequel, and putting it on your system, not a good idea. But if you partner with a developer or a new IP bringer, that is really what you got to do. So, like, I don't have any specifics, but if we could actually somehow, which they're kind of doing with ID at Xbox, foster that development. That they have Cuphead, but it's not going to be an exclusive to the console. I guarantee you it's going to come on PlayStation. It's going to come on Switch, because it makes too much sense for it not to. So they need to really foster those and build those up and make them Microsoft shops. They have a lot of great connections with these independent developers and these third parties, but they need to really create that Microsoft game studio again that brought us the Mech Assaults, that brought us the Project Gotham Racings, and just hone in on that again. Bring back some stuff from the past, like Mech Assault again, or the we don't know where it went, Crimson Skies. Reach back into your back catalog, pull some of those out, and just relaunch them as a completely new, hey, this is our new vision for this title. We're wanting to bring it to the new generation, expose a whole new subset of people to it that have never heard of Crimson Skies or Mech Assault, and bring it to that console. That would be what I would love to see them do, because you have titles already in your wheelhouse, and you just foster that development, you build it from the ground up, and you give them the Microsoft money. Nobody, Sony, Nintendo, nobody has Microsoft money. They can pour whatever they want to into anything. So if you can put some of that funding behind a great game developer that you have in-house, that you just build up, that is the answer. It's going to be a long road to do it, because you can't do it overnight. It would take 5 years if they started now to get a game from a develop house that they build up in themselves. So it's a long game, and it's not going to probably be this generation, but probably next. But I would love to see them be able to foster that talent and development in-house and be able to bring that content. Donnie, what do you think?
Can I rebuttal yours?
Sure.
All right. I won't take too long, but man, I don't think a Crimson Skies can sell today. I don't think people are going to buy a dogfighting game.
I agree with you.
I think that game is
Nathan.
now like the airplane mode of Medal of Honor now, or Battle, that stuff. It's just like a mode now.
Yeah.
Mech Assault, maybe. Like if you went Titanfall with it, maybe you could do something with it. But I mean, that's a heavy lift for, some nostalgia. I love the idea of reaching back. So if I ran Xbox, or if I sat down with Phil Spencer, to be honest with you, I'd tell him to do what he's been doing. Mm-hmm. There's been such a big part of me that wants to sit here and say they need to invest money. They took a loss on the original Xbox for like 3 or 4 years, like to penetrate the market, to be the best. They take a loss on the Xbox One X hardware because they want to be the best. It's so easy to just say Microsoft throw money at it, but they've done that. They threw money at Quantum Break, and they threw money at Sunset Overdrive, and they threw money at Scalebound, and they haven't done what you would hope to do. And I love Sunset Overdrive, by the way. That has nothing to do with about that game. That game is great. It didn't hit the market. And what I think that says to me is the Xbox market doesn't want that. As much as maybe the diehards want to fanboy and argue and say, hey, we've got these games like, Sony and their list of first-party studios, the Xbox market, the actual people buying the consoles and buying the games, I don't think they want that. I think they want what Xbox has been delivering them. They want their favorite franchises to be as good as possible. Gears, Halo, Fable's coming back, right? Like, do that, do it as big as you can. Those are your games to be there. Like, Fable should be their next huge, release that you have to buy an Xbox to play this game. Halo should be that next huge, you have to buy an Xbox to play Halo. So, like, the Bungie announcement, or the Bungie idea that you had to have them, clone some of that Destiny stuff. It's a great idea. I think it'd be a great selling point. But that's what they've got to do with their own stuff. But Game Pass, game sharing, Xbox Live, the stuff they were doing there, I've sold more Xboxes to friends since Game Pass was announced than I have in 4 years. Mm-hmm. And that's not a lie. Every time I tell anybody about this program, they look at me like in disbelief. They're like, no, what's the catch? I'm like, no, there is no catch. That's it. You want to play the next Halo game? Go get an Xbox and get Game Pass. You can play all these games, and then when the Halo comes out, you can play that one too. And they're like, for a month? No, forever. Just pay them, and it's Netflix for video games. It's such an easy selling point. It's simple and it's effective. The problem that they have now, the problem with like the way it's going to be viewed, is they can't win now. It's too late. So they got to prime themselves for the next generation. That's what they got to do. And I think that's what Phil's doing. So if I had to sit down in a room, I'd say, dude, you're doing a great job. Finish this one out. You're going to take this one on the chin. You've known it. You got dealt a bad hand. Do it better when it's your turn. Because I think when you launch a console with great games and great services at a competitive price, that point can't be missed. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You can't launch $100, $200 more than your competition. That can't happen again.
And by the way, you got to know that the next generation starts with all the games that we've got right now on our Xbox One. They're all good, like all of them.
Yep.
That's crazy. Mm-hmm.
And
Keep that's
building the ecosystem that's too hard to leave. Mm-hmm. I just got a game sharing buddy. Like just last night, Kevin Austin bought an Xbox. He's talking to me about doing game share. I was like, dude, I'm happy to do game share with you. I've always wanted a game sharing partner. We'll split some costs. You buy a game, I'll buy a game. Like, this is awesome. He signed in. He's like, do you have 400 games here? I was like, I've had an Xbox a long time. Enjoy. Like go download. Like, there's this whole thing. Like, that's such an amazing. They're so far down that road, like beyond what Nintendo is doing. Like, I don't know if Sony could do something like that. It doesn't seem like they have any want to do something like that. But yeah. That's a feature that is going to take time. That's not something you're going to walk out on stage and everybody goes and buys a system for. But that's a feature that, like, somebody listens to this show and I tell them and they're like, what's game share? They look it up, they find a friend, and all of a sudden you do that a couple thousand times and you've got somebody that'll never leave. Why would they leave? Him and the best friend. They're splitting the costs. They're playing these games. It's cost effective. I mean, I have not been more excited for Xbox than right now, like this year, since the start of the console.
So would you guys say that the state of the Xbox empire is strong?
Define strong.
Ready for the future.
I think if we were buying stock, now's the time to buy. Buy low, sell high. This is it. This is like the Wolf on Wall Street moment for Xbox. Like, buy in now, because everything's looking up from here. Like, I'm so excited for their E3, and I'm so excited for, a dozen exclusive games that they've got coming this year. And we know Halo's coming. We know Fable's coming. We know Gears is coming. So, like, they've got their tent poles on the way. So as soon as those start to come, yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait.
Sean, what do you think?
I mean, like, it's funny because as soon as you say, are you going to buy stock? Like, then I feel like that's actually a totally different question, because what I get out of my Xbox, I get all the third-party games and the exclusives. My PlayStation 4 is an exclusive machine. My Switch is an exclusive machine. But I'm very different, as I've come to learn from people. Like, for a lot of people, they look to the Xbox as having an exclusivity problem, and it cripples it. And they, for some reason, don't see the value, the fact that Call of Duty looks better on this, the fact that Assassin's Creed Origins looks better on this, and I could go on and on. The X enhancements are amazing. So I see value in that, but I'm not sure that I see that reflected in the mass market. So I'm not sure in terms of like buying stock. I don't know. And I also don't know, I have a lot of faith in Sea of Thieves. I've actually come a long way in is this thing going to be a big deal? And I think it is going to be a big deal. But I don't know that Crackdown is going to be a big deal, and I'm not really sure about State of Decay either. And again, it's funny how I just said Gears of War is my favorite franchise on the 360. It's not what I'm hyped to see more of on the X, because I don't know that they can, unless they take that jump, unless they do something else new with it that I kind of mentioned with Halo. I don't know if I want another Gears in that way. But I do want all of the other games, so I'm pumped about my future with the Xbox. I just don't know if other people are clicking with the fact that 95% of the libraries cross over with PS4, and for people who are lucky enough to have an X, it's objectively better. You can change your names. That alone makes it better.
Well, I gotta say, now that I've got a game sharing companion, like we were looking up a lineup last night, like most of our third-party purchases this year are going to be on Xbox because we're splitting the cost. That's a legit leg up.
Yep.
I'm like, I'll get Red Dead, you get Far Cry, and like we'll fill it out from there.
Great examples, man. And like the marketing deals that are like good for Sony for coming up with these marketing deals, but like they trick people into thinking that a lot of these games don't even come out for Xbox. Like Monster Hunter World, most people thought was a PlayStation 4. They're like, it was this huge deal that it wasn't on Nintendo, and it's like, I can't believe PlayStation got them. Xbox got it too.
Yep.
So yeah, I would say that's a bigger problem than the exclusivity problem. Is the ambiguity
Brand
around
awareness.
30? Yeah, for third party stuff, because that's always been from day one. It was the third party stuff that I was like, well, it looks better on this than GameCube or PS2. So that's been my place with Xbox since the start, but. I think the X puts them in a really good place for a long time, actually. I think it actually puts Sony in a really tough spot on what they do with the PS5. I think it's going to take a little while for these types of components to come down in price, for them to sell a PS5 that competes on all the levels, price and performance, versus the X. Like, this is a future-proofing product for not just the Xbox ecosystem, but it pushes away maybe Sony in a big way. They're gonna have to outdo this one, because you know that the PS5 has to be more powerful than the X. That means better components, which means maybe more expensive, but they don't seem to want to price something at that point. So I don't know, man. It messes up with timelines and stuff. It's crazy. Maybe it doesn't even have a disk drive. Who knows what's next?
Yeah. I was gonna say, I think their comfortable lead allows them to wait.
I totally agree.
They can sit and wait on time.
Totally agree.
Yep.
So I would say that the state of the Xbox empire is strong, and the fact that the future looks bright to me. The fact that, Game Pass was announced, we all thought it was a great value, and now we look at it and it's even better value because they've added more stuff. They've committed to putting day-and-date launch titles like Sea of Thieves in there, and they have today added games to backwards compatibility that are Xbox One X enhanced that are basically giving you free remasters of these games because they look night and day better. So there's a lot of things that they're doing right. The thing that they can improve on, obviously, is marketing and that messaging, but they are consumer-friendly in every sense of the word. I haven't seen anything that they've done that has been anti-consumer since Phil has taken the helm. It's all been...
Dude, free remaster. I've never heard anybody put it that way.
I mean, it essentially
totally
is.
Brilliant.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's looking good. I think it's looking up for the Xbox. But, as far as the exclusives go in this conversation, I think that we do have some room to grow as that moves along. But to me, I have the Xbox One X. I play all my games on the Xbox because it's just that ecosystem that I've come to love ever since the original Xbox, that I have friends on Xbox Live that still play today on the Xbox One, and I've played with them, in PUBG and things like that, and it's just that ecosystem continues, and it's legacy. That is what Xbox is to me, and I think it's a fantastic move, and I'm looking forward to see what more they bring to the table as the years go on. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Donnie, thank you for coming.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to keep going. Thanks for having me. I was just expecting to be like, thank you, Donnie. Thank you, Sean. And
Me too.
he'd say thank you. And he just stopped. He just put me on blast like that, man.
Well, you got to be on your toes. Sean, thank you for coming and joining tonight. Where can people find your content that you put out?
Thank you for having me, man. The first episode, I can't believe it. What an honor. You can find me on Twitter at Sean Capri, Sean like Connery, Capri like the pants. And it's great that this show is monthly because in between these episodes, you can hear me driving to work talking about Xbox on the Xbox Drive. I literally do it while I'm driving to work with my friend Dave Moore. And I also should say, you mentioned the X. If that counts, I bought that day one. I have a Project Scorpio version.
There you go. That counts.
So there you go.
Donnie, where can people find you online if they want to talk with you?
You can find me on Twitter at Playin' Nintendo. You can also find me hanging out in the PSVG Discord. And yeah, I mean, hey, yeah, I have a love affair for Nintendo. That goes without saying for most of our listeners. But as I have to remind Devin and Kyle and Seth and everybody else, man, I play everything. I got all the boxes. I play as much as I can.
Yep.
I just happen to love Link. And not Seth's kid,
Me
or
too.
Sean's kid, but...
And you can find me on Twitter at Voiced by Nathan. The show you can find on the old Twitter sphere too. We started up a Twitter handle for this show specifically, so you can come talk Xbox, and that is at PSVG Xbox Empire. So there we go. Gentlemen, this has been a fun walk down memory lane, good discussion, and hopefully you guys had as much fun as I did. But it doesn't sound like it. It's one of those things you got to
thought that was the
I thought that was a cut. I thought that was a cut for sure, man.
all right.
Show number one.
Show number one.
Episode uno.
We're still-
It comes with time.
Growing pains. It's okay. I Kevin, I don't think he had his endings, right off the bat too. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gamers alike, Imperials. Until next time, game on. This has been a production of the Play Some Video Games Podcast Network. Find more great content at playsomevideogames.com.